Hello everybody, that is here. Welcome to a new episode of Baby Blue build, which is now called Papa Blue. And even then, I don't know how much blue I actually using here. Probably not much at all, but well, we'll see. Name is not important, cool computer it is. So what I'm going here, I can see that I decide to go completely dark, almost black build with a very little amount of gray silverish accents. So it will be a super non-flashy type of the build, and it's also posing a little bit of problem for me right now to show you stuff because it's so dark. I have to shine a lot of lights on the computer itself. You probably can see that my background pretty much blown out, but I hope you at least can see what I was working on for last week essentially. So it took me a few days to finish up my water cooling loop, and this video will be talk about how I lay out basically all parts and have selected all parts. So this is more like a design type of exercise video for those of you who are interested in such things. So you remember that one of my main problems with the case labs was that it was so little that I was have a problem to put down all parts that I usually like to have in my own computer. Specifically, I like to use a couple D5 pumps for redundancy purposes. Also, it gives you a little bit extra pressure for initial fill up, which helps things as well. So I was struggling about that, and finally I ditched BH8 and I bought this unit from below, which was his one of his demo units, and he have a couple of videos with that. So it's kind of famous kind of case. It's just keep going from channel to channel and popping up in different videos. So if you remember, the first thing that I did, I had this massive fan in front which I removed. There was another fan on exhaust which I kicked out as well. First thing that I tried to do is I tried to reuse my Beats Power dual pump top combo, the one that I thought will be a nice thing to use because it's kind of cool looking, and maybe it's also will give you a little bit of blue, which I feel like obligated in a way to use some of the blue things. So I try to put it down something like this and figure out where I can put a reservoir and everything. But my problem was that essentially I also wanted to have a couple hot swap hard drives for removing all my excessive video files that accumulating over the time. At the same time, I also needed a couple hard drives just for temporary storage, so while I'm still working on computer. All software running from SSD, but actual library files will be sitting there, and as it's full I will remove it. So I have to save this cage because it was like 2 cages here, but and then I decided that I really need to save at least 1 cage. So this thing didn't work out that great, although I did a pretty neat design at some point. I had this computer tube, which is a really cool looking thingy, so I thought maybe to put it somewhere in the front. Jesus Christ. So, and have it together with combination with this. So no, it didn't work. So I struggled a little bit, a couple of days to figure out what to do, and finally, recently I sold my motherboard from my test bench. So test bench was already basically disassembled. What I did, I harvested D5 dual top from a K, which was discontinued like a zillion years ago, and I moved it from test bench and I put it here in a different orientation. So I have D5 like kind of sticking out in my test bench, but here I just put it the same like this Beats Power, so pumps facing down. That was the first part that I figured out. The question was how to mount this damn combo thing, because it has no legs, nothing, and it's supposed to be actually mounted inside of the 525 base and have some bracket to mount there. So obviously there are no 525 base in the bottom case. Again, I tried this and this and that, and in the end I ended up with flat fan brackets that I used to mount different stuff on radiators essentially. It worked well, also holes didn't align properly, so I even have to drill a little bit of extra, not a hole, but carve a little bit of metal from part of the bracket so I can put screws properly. And also I applied some foam on this bracket because pumps, they're a little bit like it's this motor. It's like the same like fan. So anything that spins, that vibrates, you like it or not. And usually you try to avoid any vibration passing on your case, especially the metal one, because cases tend to resonate with your fans and other stuff, and it amplifies your noise. So even if the pump or fan not very loud, but when it starts resonating with the case, it became like 10 times noisier. So I put some foam here, and essentially it's bolted to the bracket and also some foam between them. So even if pump will behave not like in its best manner, I wouldn't have a problem here with the noise. So that was the first part, was the hardest part for me, because I spent probably, I don't know, quite a few days. It was end of last week and beginning of this week, and still was struggling with this. But in the end, that was the part that I finished. The only things that I added in the end was I put this draining port right there. So if I need to drain, it will be here, and that allows me to get rid of most of liquid, except some parts that could be potentially trapped. And also because I have aqua air here, that I never able to use for years. It's probably like 6 build I'm trying to put it in, and never use it essentially, because it's just so complicated thing. But now software kind of matured, and I hope I can try to do my best out of this. So I put this flow meter, and also it has a connection for temperature sensor which connected to this reservoir. So eventually I will connect it to Aqua 5, and I'll have my flow meter readings. So that helps. I usually like to have a flow meter in my systems, because if the things start going down dramatically, it's usually a good indication that maybe some crap get stuck in your radiators, or sorry, not radiators, CPU, or more rarely in GPU, and so this restricts your flow. Same a couple times. I had a situation when my home computer right now, I have 5 liters per minute, and it's dropped to 1, and after cleaning my CPU block, it turns to 5 again. So I didn't wash my acrylic tubes properly, and a lot of shaving gets stuck on CPU, and it get clogged within like first months of use. After that it was fine. But again, I wouldn't even know if I wouldn't have my flow meter in my home computer. So a flow meter is kind of must thing for me. You're not necessary to have it electronically. You can have it also just visual, and just kind of eyeball like how fast it spins. So it helps too, right? But some form of flow meter, that's my recommendation here. Alright, so this was the first part that I finished up and said, okay, hallelujah, that's I have 2D5 pumps, great, and not the best type of reservoir. I don't like horizontal mount, but okay, at least I have my pumps in place. So next part was, okay, so we have now, I need one triple essentially. It will be enough for my system, because I have one 1080 and the third repair, so it should be fine. I usually use a cross flow, so I can enter here, exit there, and no tubing goes across. But because this kind of older case, my radiators there a little bit interfering with front devices, so I have to move to traditional type of radiator, which is just dual pass, and I have both ports on the end of the computer. So then essentially I just try to figure out what's the best way to make my loop without showing tubes too much. So I figured out that the easiest for me would be, main problem here, sorry, I'm jumping a little bit here, but what's happening, because Threadripper monoblock, there's no way to mount it like you want, because normal block, the advantage of normal block, that you can rotate it in 90 degrees increments and position ports in favor of you. Here I have like no freaking choice. So this is like block, it's mounted one way, and inlet also predefined, it should be this one. So you like it or not, so I have this stupid inlet in the middle of motherboard, and so it's no way to walk around it to make tubes looks hidden. That's usually my target. So what I did, I decided that, okay, so maybe the most discreet way will be go from my GPU to my CPU, and after that, there's no choice, I have to go somewhere. But also going from radiator to GPU, also kind of long run, and in order to avoid this tube running, that was bothering me visually from my OCD, I just added this single radiator for cross-flow configuration. So the only purpose of this radiator, not because I believe it's required for performance, I don't. It's the only purpose of this radiator, so I very discreet way, I connecting top triple to this single, then no tube, I just go through the radiator and exit this radiator and discreetly entering my GPU. So that allows me to go with very hidden type of tubes that I like for myself. And after that, I already mentioned that this connection from GPU to CPU, that gave me quite a bit of trouble. I couldn't sort it out also for a couple days. Not as bad as my front D5 problem, but it also was challenging. The reason that distance between this port and any of GPU ports that I have here is very short, so even if I want like hard tubing or anything like this, so it just the radius is not favorable and basically it's too close, so it had a little bit of problem here. And also ports all misaligned, so nothing like any combination of spacers like give me no good results, so always a little bit off, which also makes things hard with the hard tubing because it's actually should be straight line when you're connecting it. Or you need to bend it, but I can't bend because it's too small. So you see, I get kind of stuck here and couldn't figure it out for the love of God for quite a while, but finally, so I decided the only way to do it is use a few 90-degree adapters, kind of to go away from CPU and try to move and align it with another 90-degree adapter that goes on the side of GPU block. So I have a bunch of ports like on top, on the back, and some on the sides, but essentially this is the only one that works, and it's not like perfectly aligned, it was a little bit off, but because of the bunch of rotaries and all these things like moving in different directions, I was able to basically to put tube without excessive bend, because if you put hard tubing not very straight, actually you can squish wearing and start leaking a little bit. And being paranoid, I actually was testing every single piece that I keep completing. I was testing with Dr. Drop, so make sure that nothing leaks because there's so much stuff going on. So if something starts leaking air and you don't even know where it is, because not necessarily provide any hissing sound. So I was checking between radiator and CPU, GPU block I tested separately. I included my CPU, I tested separately. So I was going step by step, make sure that everything is airtight and there are no surprises when I feel the system, because disassembling this thing would be like a lot of hassle, right? So, and at the end, final connection was to go basically from my radiator somewhere to my pumps, and also from this port on top to my again reservoir pumps area. So first thing that I have to actually follow certain flow direction, because I already mentioned that this block is required enters in a certain place and exit a certain place, and because of my desire of hidden tubing, I already connect in a certain way, so it's going from my two radiators to GPU block and only then to Threadripper. So essentially that's the flow direction I go. And it means that the second port of radiator has to be inlet from pump, and this port from the monoblock actually exit towards the reservoir. So that was kind of settled itself over my exercising with how I lay down tubes. So what I did essentially here is it's a little bit hard to show, but I decided that I wouldn't really struggle much and just run soft flexible tubing that I put in a protective sleeve. So if I even like get pressed it with a side panel or those velcros that I fixed it, nothing bad happened to it. I use a few joint rotaries like snake type of adapter just to route through the cutout in the case. I have to remove grommet in order to do so, and so this basically I just went towards exit of the pump, and coincidentally I also exit to the pump connected to my flow meter, and so basically from flow meter I connected to radiator. So it was very simple. I already fixed it with my velcros, and nothing will happen to it. As this is a laser cut sleeving that was gifted to me for many years ago, and never had opportunity to use it. Now it's like perfect, exactly what I need. So you can't buy this thing, don't ask. Okay. Anyways, so the last thing was what to do with the exit of the CPU monoblock. The problem was here that unfortunately I couldn't go up and exit on the back and use soft tubing because my radiator and fans totally blocking cutouts and it's too close to motherboard, so I can't go up. The only way left, which is not my best way to do things, but I have to go across computer, which I tried to avoid, but I succeeded everywhere else, so one thing I let it slide. And the problem was here that it also goes across my memory, which I don't even have with me because it's now installed in my home computer, and it's a pretty tall dominator, so I wasn't sure how much space I should leave. But also I figured out that maybe I should give it a little bit more space for myself, so if I need to work on any connectors, any memory removal, so I don't want to have it too tight, so I was pretty generous, put like 30mm spacer and really pushed my connection away from the monoblock, and I use one single hard tube that I bent it 45 degrees. And I just connected it towards case. So on the case I needed to put some sort of pass-through fitting, and I didn't want to drill anything, and luckily this cutout between 525 cages and the motherboard tray was just barely smaller than the those panel pass-through fitting. So all I needed to do to take basically a screwdriver and a little bit bend both of them in different direction to make it a little bit roundish, and then I almost screwed my fittings through this basically hole and fix it with a nut. So it's sitting on the angle, which has actually worked out perfectly fine in my particular situation, because otherwise I needed to make another bend at the end. But here all I need to do one single simple bend in 45 degrees right there, and I went to 45 degrees to this port. So it was like perfect. I wasn't sure if it will work, so I tested again with the pressure draw, but no problem. So, and from here, essentially, I did this kind of convoluted configuration that I ran another flexible tube towards entrance for my reservoir, which is my water buffer. Then I looked at this and said like, wow, this is really cool looking computer, but no way in hell I will be able to feel it ever, because it's like configuration is not like optimal by any means. It serves my OCD, but in terms of how many, like, it's not perfectly cascading that you usually want to do. It's a lot of loops and trapping places for air and water, so I figured out that I will never be able to feel it out properly, and it's really big pain in the butt to do it every time. So what I decided to do, I had this idea for longest time but never implemented it. I decided that I will do temporary filling reservoirs that I'm going to use for this particular purpose, and I connect everything with quick disconnects that basically will allow me to remove it without introducing any air in the loop. So what essentially I will do, not in this video, I will disconnecting my exit from my monoblock. I will connect it to this temporary reservoir that also connected with the filter, because I don't want any junk circulating through my system, and I will connect the top of the reservoir to this temporary reservoir. So essentially that will be my separator for the air, easy to feel, easy to make sure that everything gets worked properly, even the filter part. So that will help me to feel the system with less pain, as I expect. We'll test it out next time, because now it's pretty late. I'm not going to do it anything. I just spent literally 8 hours to finishing this loop. So, but that's my idea, how to do it. So, and I will do it next week, because now it's Friday and it's time to have some free time for myself, not necessarily to be computer related. So, and when I'm done, I will just connect them back, and maybe I have one little bubble go in, but nothing more like this. And so that's basically finished for my layout. Some of you might don't like it, but I built for myself. I absolutely like what I did, and that will be pleasure to look in my basement when I make future videos for you, because I'm still using my old computer for now, but this thing is coming for video production pretty shortly. Alright guys, so that's basically the story of this build and layout. Hope you find maybe some ideas. I'm not necessarily tips because it's such specific type of configuration for my personal needs, but maybe some tips will find helpful or give you some ideas for your own stuff when you're building your own computers. Alright guys, thanks a lot, thank you for watching, see you soon.